Welcome back to CyberVault. Today, I'm thrilled to be joined by Dave McKinley. Dave is CPO at Reveal Security. And today, we're going to look into the fact that no paths are the same in cyber. More specifically, we're going to explore the secret superpowers having a non-technical start can give you, and how team synergy can define success in a startup, and even more importantly, how it can accelerate your success in a startup. Dave, great to have you on. Why don't you maybe kickstart and give us a little bit of an intro to yourself?
Sounds good. Thanks, Katie. It's great to be here. I'm really psyched to be chatting with you today. It's great to meet you in person at RSA, and I'm looking forward to seeing you at Black Hat as well. So, yeah, it's been a fun ride. So I've had a nice career so far. I've had a really good time of it. Fundamentally, my degree is in music, so I'm a musician. I live my life surrounded by guitars. I've performed for years and years. Right after I graduated from school, I went to live on board a schooner, which is a traditional sailing vessel, where I sang sea shanties for tourists. That is the absolute truth. I know it sounds odd, but that is the truth. And you might ask something along the lines of like, well, how are you qualified to do this job that you're doing right now? So it's a multi-part thing. I come from a super technical family, and my father started bringing home personal computer technology in the 1970s. Now, I shaved the beard recently, so you can't quite see it, but there's some pretty serious gray here. I'm in my 50s. And so in the late 1970s, when Dad started bringing home technology, no one told me it should be difficult, so I just kind of jumped on it and played with it and had fun. And I just latched onto it. It really worked. And I developed a hyper focus on it and got really into it. Taught myself to program. I have three older brothers, one of whom was going for a computer science degree at the time, and he taught me a lot about programming. And then as I got through into high school and college, in high school, I did the usual things a high school kid does to make money. I mowed lawns. I did odd jobs here and there. I worked with friends. But I also, as a side hustle, was fixing computers, physically fixing computers, as well as teaching people how to use them. And that led to, a bit of a watershed moment when I discovered I was musical when I was about 15 years old. I had a similar moment with music where I became a musician kind of overnight. And anyone who, if we meet in person at Black Hat or something like that, I'll tell you the whole dumb story. But really, I took to it immediately in a similar way that I did with computers, and that kind of took over my life for a while. And so I had started going to open mic nights at bars as an underage person, which was kind of fun. And I started winning open mic nights playing harmonica. And then I got really into it and went to university, and decided to study music. That didn't change the fact that I was still working with technology all the time, and spending all my time. So there's a continuity there that goes through. But what becoming a performer did was make me comfortable in front of crowds, make me comfortable in front of people, and that skill transfers over really easily into a technology role where you have to be able to talk. And that's just sort of the critical thing. You have to be able to speak to people. You have to be able to translate ideas, and that's a big part of what's led to where I am now. So does that cover it for you?
Absolutely, it does. I think the story of going music major to cybersecurity executive is just it's so interesting, and I think what's you just touched base on it there, but I think it's a bit of a secret superpower that people don't always realize, that when you don't come from a pure technical background, you haven't necessarily had to study it, the skills that gives you, and the way that they can transfer into this industry is ultimately pretty unbelievable. And I think that's where we should start, because you've worked for some pretty well-known names. You've worked at some startups, obviously doing a startup gig again right now. What would you say that, because of the pathway that you've taken and the different skills that you've gained from studying music and things like that, how would you say that it kind of is maybe being your superpower?
Um, I mean, it really is about one thing I like to say is I'm never necessarily the best engineer in the room, but I'm the one who can talk. I'm the one who can translate the ideas. I'm the one who can pull people together, and get the ideas across and get the concepts that we need to do. And that in turn leads to focusing on the customer and focusing on what people actually want, as opposed to looking at something and saying, this is a cool technical thing that I can do just because I want to, and because I'm capable of it, I always have looked at the commercial side of it as well, of like, what do people actually want? One of the really fun moments that you have when you're building products is what I call the moment of delight. The moment where someone puts their hands on a thing that you've built. Whether you've been, the person at the keyboard writing the code, whether you've been the person designing it, whatever it is, and they use it and they have a moment where their eyebrows go up and they go, "Oh wow, this is cool. I like this." And sometimes it's an unexpected moment. Sometimes it's this moment where you'll have a million lines of code sitting there behind something, and you're very proud of all the complexities and all that, and the customer goes, "Oh, cool, I like where this button is," or something like that. And you have to accept those moments of delight, because what it's really saying is you develop something that is intuitive enough, that works well enough for the customer's needs, that it's somewhat invisible. And that's really that's what I strive for in everything I do, is figuring out how to make something that people actually want, to make something that people are that makes sense, that is usable. And it's sometimes a really high bar to achieve, especially in cybersecurity, where everything is complicated. Everything's acronyms. Like, we could spend this entire podcast dissecting acronyms and going through every single acronym that you must learn in order to be a cybersecurity person. And I try so hard to avoid that. Other than I like to make up funny acronyms that are potentially with inappropriate words, but that's not necessarily at the show.
And it no, and I love what you're saying there, because I think people often forget, at the heart of cybersecurity, the reason it exists most of the time is because of people. Whether you're looking at, actually it's people that create a lot of vulnerabilities, or it's, at the end of the day, it's people that are the ones that are arguably the bad guys, kind of thing. But at the same time, it's people that you're selling to, it's people that have to use the products, and so on. I think it's so easy to forget that just because you're dealing with a product doesn't mean that actually, you've got to understand people in the way it's going to be user friendly, and people have to really believe what you're kind of selling. And I imagine, in addition to that, what I think is also easy to forget is you're working with people. And when you're especially stepping into leadership and executive positions, and even more so in a startup where you have to be agile and you have to be fast paced and you have to be able to wear a few different hats, team synergy is pretty critical. The scaling is difficult, and I think kind of, there's ups, of course, but there's a lot of downs, especially in those first few years. I mean, from your side, what do you think kind of, how have you made sure that kind of the synergy is always there when you're looking to kind of build something? And what are kind of some of the things, I suppose, that you could say, look, these are challenges that we typically face, but maybe having these skills that I've brought to the table, going down a non-traditional route, is actually maybe how I've been able to overcome them.
Yeah, I mean, great question. And one of the things about me as a musician is I'm an improviser. Like, you can drop me on stage with just about anyone. I can figure out what key we're playing in. I can figure out what we're playing, and I can figure out how to play along on one instrument or another. And that applies really well to a lot of what I do, because getting a team kind of on your side, so to speak, is an exercise in sort of improvisation to a certain extent. Because part of it is that if you think about it in terms of non-technical skills, if you've ever done any kind of improvisation, improvisational comedy is a little bit easier to look at that way, because the thing that kills a scene is someone doing a hard no. Like, if you have an improv scene where someone, you're acting on a blank stage, you say, "Hey, this is a nice day in the park," and the other person just goes, "No, we're not in the park." Then the scene's over. You've lost the energy. It's not very much fun. Yes, and it is the critical thing. Hey, we're in a park. Yeah, and I can see a dog over there. And same kind of thing applies with getting a team kind of on side. You have to yes and to a certain extent. Even if you've got someone that's going off the rails a little bit, validating and moving forward with them is a really important step along the way of helping someone feel seen and heard, but also steering. Like, there's a lot of moments where I've step in and steer and aim someone in a better direction than where they're going. And kind of recognize the horsepower that's present, and be able to say like, hey, you can do some really good things here, and I think what you've done is a great foundation, and let's steer in this direction. That makes a huge difference when pulling people together. I mean, the other secret sauce, of course, too, is that I'm working with people that I've known for a long time as well. I pull in my team, which is that's something that we do. But having that shorthand really helps a great deal. And for someone in your profession, I think it's really important to figure out how to create those human connections as we go. As is the case that we're doing right here. We have a human connection. It's really nice. Like it's great to have met you, like I said at the beginning, in person. And great to have this chat now. And the human connection makes such a big difference in this. So yeah, I don't know. Where else would you like to kind of dive in on that?
No, I think that's all really valuable because I think this is one of the biggest things that people can sometimes struggle with, especially as a leader and as executive. There's sometimes, there's sometimes kind of a character in the team that can be really challenging, but you don't necessarily see that it's that kind of diversity of thought that can kind of come into play. That when you have people that don't all act the same and they are different, and sometimes that can be more difficult to manage, but actually your innovation, your creativity, especially when you're in the space of like products or R&D, is actually most likely going to give you a higher chance of success or creating something that is more innovative. And I think you touch base on exactly what to do there, but I think that can be one of the more challenging things is you want everything to run perfectly, but you don't want everybody to be the same, and you do want different thoughts and feelings and stuff. And I mean, I suppose kind of if and just to kind of quickly add on to it, if you were to say to somebody, hey, look, if they were in that position and they're kind of like a case of, I don't really know, how can I embrace this team? How can I make sure that I'm really getting that synergy together? Or maybe I've got a counterpart that, we're bashing heads all the time. Like, how can I make sure that we've both got great ideas, but we both want to execute our own? Like, what are those kind of key things that you think this is how you can overcome that?
I mean, those tough moments appear in every career. We humans are messy and disorganized. Certainly, I am. And it's such a difficult thing because getting to the root of the issue and figuring out what's going on, especially as you get older and a little bit grayer, there are these moments where in the inner monologue, I'm thinking I've done this before. I know how this is supposed to go, but I can't just be that person. I can't just say, no, you're completely wrong because I've done this before. Because in tech, one of the phrases that I use in tech often is tech is swim or die. You have to keep moving forward. And you have to keep on the lookout for things that you might not have picked up along the way, things that I might not know. Being open to being wrong is absolutely critical. And interestingly, I had a moment yesterday with someone where this person said to me, I didn't want to bother you. And I said, that's not how this is supposed to go. My job is to be bothered. My job is to be the person that you bother because I'm the one that can take action on it. And when you're, I've tried to be very self-aware in the journey to sort of the senior executive thing, as being inaccessible as a senior executive is a really unpleasant thing. And I've been guilty of that, certainly just out of circumstances. Sometimes like the days are busy and it's really hard to respond, but I try my best. Don't always do it right, but being able to be accessible, and being able to be not a source of angst is one of the things I strive really hard to do. It's none of us are ever successful at everything we do that way, but it is really important to make that happen. So that's a big part of it for me.
Yeah,
Make sense?
well, definitely. And I think that's one of the really big things that people often look at, because I think once you step into an executive role, you almost kind of can feel a little bit more untouchable. It's like people can be intimidated by a job title quite easily.
Mhm.
And so to create and make yourself more accessible or even just approachable can be really difficult, especially like if you're in a remote role and you're not kind of just sat there in the office and people can't see that, oh, they're just on a meeting or they're busy. It's a case that,
Mhm.
you're seeing kind of, oh, they haven't got back and stuff. But these are definitely challenges that I think are a growth kind of, you've got to go through them. You've got to learn that actually, and I think that transparency piece of being able to connect with your team and reflect and say, oh, these are reasons or challenges that maybe they haven't been able to approach, and I think that's a really important takeaway. What I actually want to kind of slightly shift to, because I think, another thing that's really interesting about security is there's a lot of startups out there. There's so much noise going on. There's so many different pathways you could take. It's like the opportunities are endless. But obviously, you made the exciting decision to join the team at Reveal. And obviously, taking everything that we've taken there, we've obviously been able to understand how you've built your career and how you've been able to build the relationships with that you have. And of course, like you said, being able to take a lot of team with you because of those great, those great journeys you've been on. What made you take the move, or kind of, what was it about Reveal that kind of made you go, right, yeah, this is the next adventure for me?
Mhm. Combination of all sorts of things. So we sold Revelstoke security at Arctic Wolf. Revelstoke was a SOAR product, security orchestration automation response. And Arctic Wolf acquired us a couple of years ago, and that was a really fantastic experience overall. Lots of amazing people at Arctic Wolf, and I ended up in Arctic Wolf in a role where I had several teams reporting to me. I had my original SOAR team, and then I also had some other folks from other parts of the team as well. I made a lot of new friends, and the reality is that I looked at Arctic Wolf and I said to myself, I could have a really comfortable career here. And unfortunately for myself, for my wife, for everyone else, I don't do well with comfort. And so I wanted to make a move into something where I was going to be going crazy again and having lots of exciting things going on. So I reached out to some friends and ended up being introduced to Kevin, who is the CEO here at Reveal. And his experience is the perfect complement to my own. Like we vibed essentially instantly. He's the former chief operating officer of Dell SecureWorks, among other things. Has had a fantastic career, and he and I were walking together at one point or another. And I said, "Hey, what motivated you to join here?" And he said, "I really wanted to do something small." And I said, "Oh, yeah, this is. I mean, I've been employee number one several times, and I was like, this doesn't feel small right now to me." And so we're really meshing well that way. Very similar philosophies on things. And that was a huge part of it. The other thing is there's a market emerging now for Reveal's product, where we're in the process of changing around a bit of how the product works at the moment, while using the same core that was built over the last several years, to really expose a lot more value to customers at the moment. And we're seeing some good upticks at the moment. We're looking forward to Black Hat. Black Hat, where we will be coming out with a new product at that point that's built on the foundations of the past. Really excited about that. I'm not going to reveal, so to speak, a ton of it right now. Sorry, I couldn't help myself. It's a funny challenge. There was like, I worked at a company called DTech Systems, and Mohan Ku was the CEO there. Super fun guy. Really enjoyed him. And I realized I used to say, "Give me a mo" all the time, as in give me a moment. And I had to stop. And so with Reveal, it's kind of like, oh man, I use that word a lot, and it sounds just a little over the top when I go for it that way. So yeah, sorry. And this thing will deviate into a miasma of me doing dumb stand-up comedy jokes if you don't keep me on track here. So we'll so
Everybody's just
so
waiting for the jokes at this point.
yeah. So anyway, it really came down to like Kevin and I really vibed, and it was clear that I would have the operational control I needed to be able to really turbocharge the company. So that was the motivation, is that Arctic Wolf, fantastic place, super enjoyed everyone there, lots of great connections, lots of great people I'm still in touch with. And I could see a future for myself there, but I love the phase that we're in right now of like everything's happening all at once. There are 16 different threads that all have to come together simultaneously for something to go correctly. It's pulling on every single string in my ADHD brain, and it just is. It's so much fun. It's just awesome.
No, and I've got to say as well, meeting you both at RSA, it was clear when we talk about that team synergy earlier, it was like kind of just clear as day that that was well and truly embedded. And I think sometimes it's about seizing those opportunities. Success can really come from working with the right people. I mean, don't get me wrong, it doesn't have to be defined that way. You don't have to be best buds with everyone, which we were saying earlier, but actually if you can have that, the likelihood of you enjoying what you're doing as well, because startup is not easy, is definitely valuable, and something I think, yeah, people really underestimate. um and so kind of reflecting on your journey, because I think we've really been able to open up a couple of key things there that I think people often need to consider, and or may struggle with, and especially, don't get me wrong, these are all relevant, whether you're in scaling, whether you're in enterprise, or if you are in that early stage of startup. But if we look at your journey, if there was like one key non-negotiable, something that you've stuck by, or something that if you were just to look back and say, actually, this is something that has definitely helped define the success that I've been able to achieve to this point today, what would it be?
Fantastic question, and I have an answer that you probably, I don't know if I've said this to you in person or not, but here's the thing. I've done a bunch of really cool stuff in my career. I've done a bunch of crazy stuff in my career. If you ever meet me in person, I have a folder on my phone called Stupid Stories that I may or may not show you, that has photos of stories that I will tell that sound like I'm making things up. It sounds like I'm lying. Some of the crazy things I've done. Not appropriate for this show right now. Um, I've got a bundle of patents. I've done a bunch of other interesting things. Those achievements are essentially meaningless to me. The most important thing for me, the thing I care about most, is people, and I've launched a whole bunch of people's careers over the years, and that's really that's what drives me. It makes me really really happy. It is like I've helped people. I've helped people, get into a better place. I've helped people go to new jobs elsewhere. I've lifted people up where I can, and that's what's critically important to me. And that's one of the reasons, that's really the only motivating reason that I do this job, is that I want to be able to help people get to where they need to go. And sometimes that can be messy. Sometimes it requires a leap of faith. Sometimes it requires other things. But it's about people. And I'll give you a critical example, which is a really, really, really close friend of mine, that I've known since she was, I want to say 14 years old. Not entirely sure. She's probably not going to see this, so it doesn't matter anyway. She and I worked together for years. I got her first job, and pulled her into a couple of companies further along, and then she was at a real inflection point in her career, and I had her chat with a friend of mine about where she wanted to go with her career. And I chatted with him after the fact, and he said, "Yeah, man, she's an author. She shouldn't work here." And so I didn't tell her that. That wasn't me, but I created the connection that told her that, and she's a New York Times bestselling author now. And it's amazing. Like, it's really cool. And that's stuff where, the running joke I have with this person is that whenever I see her, I say, "I used to take credit for your career and I can't anymore." And that's too bad. But seeing that kind of success is really, really cool. And that's what drives me more than anything else. So it's that moment when I became a leader years and years and years ago, where I realized that was what I cared about more than anything. And being a leader isn't necessarily all about telling people what to do and aiming them in a certain direction or anything like that. It's about, for me, it's about getting to know them, and getting to know them as humans, and making sure that I take care of them as well as I can. And sometimes I can't, and sometimes we part ways, and that's a moment. That's a difficult moment, and I don't ever want to not feel those moments. So that's really, fundamentally, that's what it is for me, though.
No, incredible. And I think, again, what you've just done there, Dave, is you've just kind of reiterated that, there's so many people in the industry that care, and they do want to see kind of people succeed, and they do want to help. And I think there's so many individuals that are earlier on in their career that can sometimes feel pretty isolated, or they can find that this is not an easy job by any means. And I think people really underestimate that when they get into the industry. But Dave, honestly, this has been an unbelievable conversation. Like I say, the startup world is really not easy, but it is a very exciting space. And thank you so much for coming on today. And to our listeners, make sure to connect with Dave. Obviously, check out what the team at Reveal are doing. More importantly, I would say keep your eyes peeled for Black Cat. I'm pretty sure we're going to do some live content while we're there to talk about things, but there's definitely some exciting stuff coming on the horizon. But as always, don't forget to subscribe. Make sure to share this episode with any security peers, especially if they are in the startup space or looking to make the leap into the world of startup. And get connected with us on LinkedIn. But that's it for today. Thank you for tuning in, and I'll see you next time for more conversations in shaping cyber. Thanks, Dave.
Thanks, Katie. This was great.